The wind howled over the cliffs of Bravos, cold and biting, like the edge of a Valyrian steel blade. The sea below crashed violently against the rocks, but deep within the narrow alleys of the city, a quiet secret was being kept, one that could shake the Seven Kingdoms to their knees. Ned Stark had never trusted Robert Baratheon's temper, nor the hungry eyes of Queen Cersei. The day he held Lyanna dying in his arms, her baby boy, wrapped in blood-soaked linens, Ned knew this child was no ordinary bastard. His name was Jon, but more than that, he was the blood of the dragon and ice both, Rhaegar Targaryen's heir, and that meant death. He couldn't risk bringing Jon to Winterfell as his own. The name Stark might shield the boy from suspicion for a time, but not forever. Not with Varys whispering in shadows and Littlefinger watching with a serpent's grin. Ned had written only one letter that night, to an old contact in Bravos. The man had no face, no name. They had crossed paths long ago during Ned's youth, when the Stark heir had wandered too far into Essos during Robert's rebellion, trying to find Benjen. There, for just a few desperate days, Ned had fought alongside the Faceless men to escape slavers. He had saved one of their own, and the debt remained. The reply came not in ink, but in silence. One foggy night, just before dawn, a ship waited. In White Harbour, Ned placed the infant in a black basket, wrapped tightly in direwolf fur. Sir Roderick Cassel delivered the child without question. Ned had not given him one. No one saw the boy again, not in the north, not in the Red Keep, not anywhere. Jon Snow did not grow up in Winterfell, scorned by Catelyn, overshadowed by Robb. He was never called Snow. Instead, he grew up with no name at all. Within the hidden halls of the House of Black and White, among whispering candles and the stench of death, the boy learned silence before he learned speech. The kindly man fed him bread dipped in poison, not enough to kill, but enough to make him cautious. The waif slapped his hand whenever he asked who he was. They did not give him love, nor lies. They gave him tools, daggers, masks, poisons, secrets. By the time he was 10, Jon could walk past a Bravosi merchant, mimic his accent, and slit his purse strings, or his throat. By 13, he could become anyone, even no one, but Jon was not no one. The dreams wouldn't let him forget. He saw a red tower, a woman's blood-streaked face, a man with silver hair holding out a sword, and wolves, always wolves, howling. Beneath a weirwood tree, the kindly man told him to let go of dreams. Dreams are for those who wish to be someone. But Jon couldn't forget the cold, the snow, the sense that he once belonged somewhere, far away from Bravos. And then, one day, the raven came. Not a real raven, but a man cloaked in black feathers, face hidden beneath a hood, voice soft like a breeze in winter. "You're not ready," the man said, "but the world is." Jon, now 15, stared at the man with dark eyes that had never flinched, not even before death. "What am I supposed to be ready for?" The man smiled. "For your name." And just like that, the game began. Bravos smelled like salt, rot, and secrets. Jon had lived most of his life in its shadows, moving from crypt to alley, from mask to mask. The Faceless men had raised him, without affection, but not without purpose. Every task, every test, every pain carved something into him. He was a boy no more. He was a weapon now, sharp and silent, but the raven had changed something. Since the encounter, the House of Black and White had grown colder toward him. The waif, always cruel, now watched him with open contempt, as if she knew something he didn't. The kindly man began giving him fewer tasks, fewer lessons. He was being distanced, and dreams, they came harder now, heavier, faces he'd never seen but somehow knew. A voice, soft, regal, aching with sorrow, whispered his name. Jon. He woke one night drenched in sweat, clutching a dagger he didn't remember grabbing. His bunk was soaked, his heart pounded like war drums. And for the first time in years, he felt fear, not of death, but of truth. He wasn't like the others. He never had been. The kindly man summoned him soon after. The chamber was lit by only a single candle. The light flickered on the walls, casting shadows that seemed to breathe. "You were not meant to stay forever," the old man said, face unreadable. "The many-faced god demands a debt paid. You must return." "Return?" John asked, though he already felt what was coming. "To Westeros, to the land you were born in, to the truth." He felt like the stone beneath him had shifted. "Why? Now?" The man did not answer, but he gave him a face, a pale, soft leather mask with freckles and dark hair. "A stable boy. No one of note. You will cross as Thomas Hill. Bastard. Common. Unseen. In silence you will watch. And if the time comes, act." John clenched the mask in his hands. "Act how?" The old man finally looked at him, not with command, but with something like sorrow. "There are many wars coming. Some are louder than steel. Some are fought. With names." He arrived in King's Landing months later, aboard a spice ship owned by House Velaryon. Nobody paid attention to another quiet bastard cleaning horse dung from boots and saddles. He made himself small, forgettable. But he watched. He saw the gold cloaks bullying peasants in Flea Bottom. He saw the red cloaks of the Lannisters swagger through taverns, speaking of dragons and bastards with contempt. He saw Queen Cersei once, just once, riding through the city in a black carriage, face cold and cruel. The moment he saw her, his stomach twisted in ways he didn't understand, as if some invisible string pulled tight inside his chest. That night the dreams returned again, a red tower, his mother's voice. "Promise me, Ned." John worked at the stables outside the Red Keep. The guards never noticed him. Lords came and went. Knights boasted about their battles, and whispers floated in the air like smoke. Whispers of war in the north, of a wolf uprising, of Robb Stark, the young wolf. The name cut through John like a blade. Robb, a brother he had never met. One night, when the moon was high and the city quiet, a man approached him in the shadows of the stables. He wore dark clothes, but John could tell from his posture he was no stable hand. "You've grown into something dangerous," the man said without greeting. John said nothing, but his hand went to the hidden dagger at his waist. The man stepped forward. He removed his hood. It was Jaqen H'ghar, or at least a face worn by him. "The game has changed. The players move quicker now. Your presence here is no longer observation." John narrowed his eyes. "Then what?" Jaqen looked toward the red. "Keep. She is hunting dragons, but it is the wolf she truly fears." "Robb," Jaqen shook his head slowly. "You." John's world tilted again. "She doesn't even know I exist. She doesn't need to. Blood remembers. Magic stirs. And there are those who would tell her if they knew." John swallowed hard. "Then I stay hidden." "For now," Jaqen replied. "But soon, a choice must be made. You cannot wear masks forever, Jon Stark." The name, hearing it aloud, it felt like fire in his veins. He didn't correct him. The next week a raven came to the Red Keep from Riverrun. The Starks had won a great victory. The North was rallying. The young wolf was declaring independence. The city whispered of traitors, of executions. That night, Jon crept into the Grand Sept, disguised as a Septon's boy. He lit candles, cleaned floors, watched the nobles pray for protection they didn't deserve, and then he found her, Sansa. She was smaller than he imagined, but the same flame-colored hair as the woman from his dreams, his mother's blood, his sister. He didn't speak. He couldn't, but something in him cracked watching her kneel before a statue of the mother, tears quietly running down her cheeks. He fled before she saw him. A week later, chaos erupted. A boy king had murdered Ned Stark. Jon heard the news, not from the bells, but from a passing knight who mocked, the traitor wolf who finally lost his head. He vomited behind the stables. He had no face, no name, no father, but the fire in him began to rise. He saw the Red Keep not as a castle, but as a lair of liars, of vipers, of men who played games with honor and spilled the blood of the innocent. Jacon returned one final time. "You feel it now," he said. "The weight." John clenched his fists. "I want to kill them all." Jacon smiled faintly. "Good. That's how vengeance begins. But if you want justice, you must be more than a shadow." John looked down at the face he wore, at Thomas Hill, and for the first time he whispered, "This isn't me." The city moved on after Eddard Stark's death. But John didn't. Something inside him had shattered, something that couldn't be stitched back with silence or prayer. The mask of Thomas Hill still clung to his skin, but the face beneath it had begun to harden. He no longer just watched the game. He started learning how to play it. He spent his days among filth and horses, but his nights were different now. He wandered the alleys of King's Landing, memorizing routes, studying the schedules of guards, marking weak spots in the castle walls. He started visiting blacksmiths, listening in on drunk sellswords, slipping poison into the mugs of Lannister. Informants just to watch them squirm with fear and confusion. But John didn't kill. Not yet. The many-faced god had taught him patience. Death was a gift only when it was earned, and Cersei Lannister hadn't earned hers, yet. Still, he knew she feared something. Every week her guards doubled. Her spies whispered through the brothels and taverns. Rumors spread that her own brother Tyrion was sending coin to the north, and always her eyes returned to Sansa. Sansa had become her hostage, her leverage, her living trophy from the fall of House Stark. She dressed the girl in southern silks, but John could see it clearly now. One of fear, one of pain. He could not speak to her, not yet, but he began leaving small things where she might find them. A wolf carved from driftwood placed near her chamber door. A single white feather slipped into her prayer book. A coin of Braavos. Beneath her pillow, he never stayed to watch her find them. He wasn't seeking thanks. Only connection, only proof that he still had a family. Word of war swept across the city like wildfire. Robb Stark was winning. The Riverlands bent the knee. The Freys were in talks. Tywin was furious, and Cersei was panicking. John listened carefully. In the taverns, where men spoke too freely after a few cups, one knight mentioned Stannis gathering strength in Dragonstone. Another muttered about a red priestess who spoke of kings made of snow and shadow. The prophecies always made John uncomfortable. The Faceless men didn't believe in destiny, only balance. But the North called to him like a drumbeat in the dark. Then one night something changed. He followed a drunk Lannister knight into an alley, intending only to rob his map pouch. Instead he heard a name. Snow. They're looking for a Snow, not Stark. Snow in Braavos. John froze. The knight went on, muttering nonsense about Targaryen bastards and the Spider's List. But the damage was done. Someone knew. Someone out there, Varys, maybe even Littlefinger, had started connecting the threads. And John wasn't safe anymore. Not in Braavos, and not here. He returned to the stable, breathing heavy, heart pounding, in his chest like it wanted out. The next morning, the kindly man was waiting. He should not have been in King's Landing. He should not have known where John was. And yet, he stood in the shadows of the stables, calm and silent. Like death itself. "You have stayed too long," he said softly. "I'm not done," John replied. The kindly man tilted his head. "You were not meant to be done. You were meant to disappear. But you have let yourself be seen. You left signs. For the girl, you listened with ears too curious. You remembered who you are." John didn't respond. The kindly man stepped closer. "There is a price to remember. If you want to keep your name, you must give up the gods." John's hand trembled slightly. He knew what that meant. The faceless men had no forgiveness. You were either one of them or one of their targets. I don't want your name, John said. I want hers back. Then you will have to bleed for it. That night, John went to the Grand Sept again. Sansa was alone, as she often was. A single scepter stood watch, but dozed with her hands in her lap. John moved silently through the shadows. He approached slowly, mask in hand. "Sansa," he whispered. She turned, startled, her eyes wide with fear at first, then confusion, then recognition. He didn't speak again. He only pulled back the mask, just enough. She gasped, "John!" He nodded once. She ran to him, threw her arms around him, and for a moment the world stopped. No war, no betrayal, no gods or masks, just two siblings in the wrong place, in the wrong time, but together. "I thought you were dead," she whispered. "I was hidden," he said. "I had to be. Why are you here?" He looked at her. "To bring you home." Sansa's face collapsed. "There is no home, not anymore. There will be, I promise." It wasn't a faceless man who made that vow. It was Jon Stark. As he turned to leave, he felt it. Danger. Two Lannister guards approached from the corridor. Sansa whispered, "Hide!" Jon moved quickly, ducking behind the altar. But the guards had already heard something. "Who's there?" one barked. Jon didn't hesitate. He moved like death itself, grabbing the first guard and slitting his throat in one motion. The second barely had time to scream before Jon's dagger was in his eye. The scepter screamed. Sansa covered her mouth. Jon stood there, blood dripping from his blade, face exposed. Too late. He had been seen, and worse, he had chosen to be seen. Before sunrise, the city was whispering again. Two guards murdered in the sept, a shadow moving through the corridors. Some said it was a ghost, others a northern assassin, but those who really paid attention spoke of a boy with black hair and the eyes of a wolf. The kindly man left a coin on Jon's bed that night. It was split in two, a message clear as day. "You are not one of us anymore. And now, we are coming for you." King's Landing had always been dangerous, but now it was a noose tightening around Jon's throat. By dawn, the Red Keep was crawling with guards. Gold cloaks knocked on every door. Sansa had been confined to her chambers. The High Septon issued a quiet blessing for the souls of the murdered guards, but beneath the holy words, Jon could feel it. Fear. Someone important had seen him. Someone had whispered his face into the right ears. He wasn't Thomas Hill anymore. He was a ghost that refused to die. He needed to disappear, but not alone. The way to Sansa was now blocked, closely guarded by Sir Meryn Trant's men. Jon had watched the man from afar, brutish, cruel, all violence, and no honor. Jon had killed men more dangerous than him back in Braavos, but not in a castle full of Lannisters, and worse still, he felt them closing in, the faceless men. They didn't send ravens, they didn't give warnings. But Jon knew the signs. A flower placed on a windowsill in the shape of a tear, a small coin placed beneath the water bucket, a cat found hanging by its neck in the stables, eyes missing. Messages. He had broken their laws. He had taken back his name, and for that they would unmake him, but not before he saved her. He needed help, and he knew just where to find it, in the black markets near the Mudgate, where loyalty was always for sale. He went to a woman named Lara, a smuggler who used to work for the Brotherhood Without Banners. Her nose had been cut off by the mountain years ago, and now she dealt in poisons and secrets. She didn't flinch when she saw him. "You've got the look of someone being hunted by more than just men," she said, lighting a crooked pipe. "I need a way out of the city," Jon said. "And a message sent north." "North?" She raised a brow. "No one sends ravens north unless they want ice on their bones. I need to reach the Stark bannermen. Tell them I live, and that Sansa is their hostage." She blew smoke toward him. "Big words, boy. Do you have the coin to back them? John pulled the last coin the kindly man had left him, the one broken in half. The mark of betrayal, of abandonment. Lara stared at it long and hard. Then she nodded. That'll do. By nightfall, John had a plan, a hidden path through the catacombs beneath the Sept, an old smuggler's tunnel that led to Blackwater Bay. But getting Sansa there would mean going through the Red Keep and past Sir Meryn Trant. So John waited for the right moment, for darkness, for distraction, and it came, just as he hoped. A riot erupted outside the great Sept. Starving peasants clashed with gold cloaks. Fires lit up the sky. Somewhere in the distance a Sept was burning. The smell of ash and blood was thick in the air. John moved like a shadow, climbing the inner walls of the keep using ivy and broken bricks, reaching the narrow balcony just outside Sansa's chamber. She was already awake, wide-eyed, dressed in a plain nightgown. "You came back," she whispered. "I never left." He held out his hand. She didn't hesitate. They moved fast, slipping through servant halls and abandoned storage rooms. John knew every twist of the castle now, every blind spot. He had walked these halls for months without a name. Now he walked, with purpose, but fate was cruel. Just as they neared the old catacombs, Sir Meryn Trant stepped from the shadows, flanked by 2 Lannister guards. "Well, well," Trant sneered, "a little rat in the walls." John pushed Sansa behind him. Trant looked her over like a man inspecting a caged bird. "Thought I heard the Lady Stark was getting ideas. You should have stayed in your pretty room." "I'm taking her from here," John growled. Trant laughed. "With what? A kitchen knife?" But John didn't reach for a weapon. He let go of the fear. He let go of the hesitation. He stepped forward, and in one quick motion he swept up the torch from the wall, flung the flames into Trant's eyes, and drove a hidden blade deep into the guard beside him. Sansa screamed. Trant roared, clawing at his burned face. The second guard lunged, but John moved faster, parrying, striking low, and slicing the man's leg before finishing him with a stab to the throat. Trant charged blind, swinging wildly. John stepped aside, letting the brute's own momentum send him into the stone wall. The torch clattered to the ground. John didn't hesitate. He buried the blade into Trant's chest. Over. Done. He turned to Sansa. "Come on." She stared at him, shaking. You killed them." He nodded. "And I'll kill more if I have to." Not a knight. Not a soldier. A ghost with a name. A Stark. The tunnel was dark and damp. Rats squealed beneath their feet. But Sansa followed him step for step. When they emerged near the shores of Blackwater Bay, Lara was waiting with a small skiff and 2 oars. "You're lucky," she said. "They're tearing the city apart looking for you. Even the spider's nervous." John helped Sansa into the boat. Then he turned to Lara. "If they catch you, they won't," she said with a smirk. "Besides, they only kill people who matter, and I don't matter to anyone." She winked and shoved them off into the water. The stars hung low over the bay. The city behind them burned like a dying beast, and in the quiet between oar strokes, Sansa finally asked the question that had been building in her eyes. "Who are you really?" John paused, then said, "My name is John Stark, and I'm done hiding." The sea stretched endlessly before them, black and restless. Each wave that rocked the skiff felt like a heartbeat against John's chest, a reminder he was alive, finally living as himself, without masks or whispers. Behind him, King's Landing glowed like a wound, bleeding smoke and fire into the night. Sansa stared back at it, silent. Neither of them spoke much during the voyage. The salt air stung their eyes, the cold bit into their bones. But the silence wasn't empty. It was full of ghosts, full of everything they'd both lost. Lara's boat took them as far as a hidden cove south of Cracklaw Point. From there, it was boots on mud and moss, horses borrowed from a crooked fisherman who knew better than to ask names, and days of travel through unfamiliar terrain. They avoided the King's Road, slipped through the woods like shadows, always looking over their shoulders. John knew the faceless men wouldn't give up easily, and now others were hunting too. The Crown had placed a bounty on the stark bastard. 10,000 gold dragons. A king's reward for a dead man. "I'm not even the real heir," John muttered one night as they camped beneath a canopy of pine. "Why does everyone act like I matter?" Sansa looked up from the fire. Her eyes were tired, but clear. "Because you were never just a bastard, John." She paused, then added, "You still don't know, do you?" John frowned. "Know what?" "About your mother, about who you are." He felt a chill deeper than the night air. "I only know fragments. Blood and fire, a name I can't remember." Sansa moved closer. "Ned told Catelyn that you were his, but she never believed him. Neither did I, not really. He was too careful, too silent about it. I once heard Maester Lewin whisper to Robb that your blood might be worth more than any Stark's." She bit her lip, hesitant. "John, your mother wasn't some tavern girl. I think she was noble, maybe even royal." John stared into the flames. The flickering reminded him of dragon fire, of screams in dreams, if it was true. It changed everything. But it also made sense. Why the faceless men kept him hidden. Why Varys whispered his name. Why the Lannisters feared a Snow more than the Wolf King in the north. Because John wasn't just a threat to their power. He was a challenge to the throne itself. They finally reached the ruins of an old watchtower near Maidenpool, a quiet place where the Brotherhood without banners once held camp. John had fought there once, under another name, when he was younger and faceless. Now it served as shelter while they waited for word from the north. Lara's raven arrived first. The wolf stirs. "Look to the banner of the flayed man." John, read the note 3 times, jaw tightening. "What does it mean?" Sansa asked. "It means the Boltons are in control of Winterfell now. Rose Bolton. He betrayed Robb at the Twins. They gave him the North for it." Sansa's face paled. "I knew they killed Robb, but they took Winterfell too." John nodded grimly. "The North bleeds. They flay anyone who speaks of wolves." Silence fell between them again. This time it was heavier, denser. Sansa whispered, "Then there's nothing left to go back to." "There's always something," John replied. "A name, a cause, a people. But how do we take it back? It's just us. 2 broken Starks against armies." He looked at her and said, "Then we find more wolves." That night, John left Sansa, under protection, and rode alone to a nearby village where the northern resistance was rumoured to hide. The place was called Hollow Hearth, a forgotten hamlet, half burned by Lannister men, still smelling faintly of smoke and death. Inside a ruined longhouse, he found them. 4 men, 2 women, all wrapped in cloaks the colour of ash. Their leader was a scarred man with 1 eye and a northern brogue sharp as frost. "You're either very brave or very stupid," the man said as John stepped forward. "The Boltons put your name on every wall from here to Dreadfort." John removed his cloak. "I'm John Stark, and I didn't come to beg." One of the women stood, eyes wide. "By the old gods, I came to fight," John continued. "Not for vengeance, for the North, for the people the Boltons butchered, for Winterfell." "And what makes you think we'll follow a bastard boy with no army?" the one-eyed man growled. John stepped closer. "Because I don't need you to follow me. I need you to stand with me." The woman smiled. "Sounds like Ned Stark's blood to me." By the time he returned to the tower, Sansa had gathered what supplies they had. Her face was calmer now, more resolved. "I had another dream," she said quietly. "I saw a white direwolf howling in snow. It was standing over a grave." John raised a brow. "Mine!" She shook her head. "Ours!" The next morning they moved again, this time with allies. 3 riders from Hollow Hearth joined them. More were to follow. Each step north was colder, harder. The land itself seemed to mourn. Villages were burned, children starved. Trees were cut down for war machines, but at every fire, every inn, every whispering farmer's hut, John repeated the same words. The Starks are not gone. We are coming back. Winter is not finished. And people listened, but the Faceless. Men hadn't forgotten him. In the shadows of an abandoned village, just outside the Neck, John found a corpse hanging from a tree. It was a northern scout, one of the hollow hearth riders. Carved into his chest, with precision only John recognized, were the words, Valar Morghulis. One life remains. John stared at the body for a long time. He didn't blink, he didn't cry, he just whispered, Then come for me, because the Stark in him had risen, and the North was waiting. The North wasn't a place. It was a spirit, cold, silent, enduring, and as John crossed the snowy ridges beyond the Neck, the wind howling like wolves in mourning, he felt that spirit call him home, not to comfort, but to war. He wasn't the same boy who left Braavos with a borrowed face and silent footsteps. He was heavier now, not just in body, but in purpose. He had a name again, and names had power, but names also made you a target. The Faceless men were coming. They didn't come with banners or horns. They didn't ride horses. They didn't shout oaths. They slipped through shadows. They watched from treetops. They killed, without sound. John felt them before he saw them, like cold breath on the back of his neck. They were close now, and they wouldn't stop until he was ash and memory. Still, he pressed on, with Sansa by his side, a growing band of northern loyalists behind him, and whispers of rebellion catching fire like dry leaves in a winter wind. They reached an old holdfast called Wolf's Rest, nothing more than crumbling stone and burned timber. But it held what they needed, shelter, maps, and a raven tower. From there, John sent a final message to the last true bannerman who might still remember the honor in the name Stark. The wolf returns. The North must choose. That night, John stood alone on the tower, staring into the snow. He knew what had to happen. The Boltons wouldn't fall through scattered raids or whispered loyalty. They needed something bold, something brutal, a strike that would make the flayed banners burn in the minds of every northern heart. They needed to take Winterfell back. But there was another war, one that followed him through silence. The Faceless men. They would not allow him to live. He heard them in the woods, saw their signs, the dagger carved into trees, the dead crow lay gently at his doorstep. A girl's face left in his bed, one he remembered training with in Braavos, who had once laughed at his clumsy knife work. Now she was just a message. John returned to the fire, heart steady. Sansa looked up from her stitching. They're here, aren't they? Yes. Will you kill them? If I have to, she lowered her gaze. I hope you do. They attacked that night, not with an army, but with silence. John awoke to the screams of one of the scouts. By the time he reached the camp's edge, 3 were dead. The snow was red, and the wind howled through the branches like mourning mothers. Then he saw her, the waif. Face blank, eyes black as oil, twin daggers in hand, wet with blood. You broke the pact, she whispered, stepping through the snow like a ghost. You chose a name. I chose a family, John replied. She lunged. Their blades met with a clash of steel that echoed into the woods. She was faster, cleaner. Years of Braavosi training danced through her limbs like second nature. John was stronger now, rougher, his footwork more northern than silent but full of power. He fought like a wolf cornered, feral, unforgiving. She slashed across his ribs. He stabbed low into her thigh. She grinned. You still hesitate. He didn't reply. He waited, let her get close, then drove a hidden blade from his sleeve into her side, deep and final. Her breath caught, blood bubbled from her lips. She staggered back, eyes wide, not with fear, but disappointment. You were supposed to become no one. John stepped closer. I was always someone. You just couldn't kill it. She died in silence, the way she would have wanted. They burned her body by morning. Sansa didn't cry. Jon didn't either. There was no joy in the victory, only the knowledge that one war at least was done, but the other remained, and Winterfell loomed. The march north took weeks. Snow fell in sheets. Wolves howled in the distance. But the bannermen came. From Bear Island, the Mormonts sent 50 strong, hard men and harder women who still remembered the name Stark. From Deepwood Motte came iron-born deserters who had once sworn to Theon, but now sought redemption. From the hills near White Harbor, ragged farmers, sons of slaughtered lords, and even a few wildlings joined Jon's cause. Not for gold, not for power, but for home. They reached the outskirts of Winterfell under the cloak of a snowstorm. Jon stood on a ridge, looking down at the place of his childhood. The towers were different, the walls scarred. The godswood dead and cold, but the heart of it still beat. The banners of the flayed man waved proudly above the gate. Jon turned to his soldiers, no more than a few hundred. "I won't lie to you," he said, voice steady. "We're outnumbered. Roose Bolton's men are better armed. They've held these walls for years." A murmur of unease spread, "But they don't have this." He pulled his cloak aside, revealing the dire wolf emblem he'd kept hidden for so long. "They don't have this name." The murmurs turned to cries. He raised his sword. "Winterfell is not theirs. It is ours." The battle was a blur of blood and steel. Jon led the charge through the snow, cutting down traitors with a fury born of years in the dark. The gates burned, the walls fell. Roose Bolton was slain by his own men when they saw the tide turn. His rule nothing more than fear, and fear died quickly. When the sun rose, Winterfell was theirs. Sansa walked the halls in silence, trailing, her fingers along the walls, as if trying to feel her family's ghosts. Jon stood in the godswood before the weirwood tree. He knelt and closed his eyes. He had come home, not as a bastard, not as no one, as a Stark. A week later, word spread across the north. Jon Stark had taken back Winterfell. The wolf had returned. And far away, in a red chamber within Dragonstone, a woman with silver hair read the news with narrowed eyes. "Stark?" Daenerys whispered. "No," said the old knight beside her. "He's not just Stark. He's Targaryen."